Hi, my name is Tom Gray, and I'm here with Susan Crossman and our guest this week, Corey Perlman. Susan and I are collaborators in a venture called Content with Clout, and it's how to develop the right content and get it distributed online so that you can create traffic and opportunity for your business. Corey is an entrepreneur. He's an author and a nationally recognized social media expert. He came to fame as a result of a book he wrote. It's been a couple years now, but the book is still highly relevant. It's called E-Boot Camp. You can get it at Amazon or at most bookstores. I think it's pretty much available everywhere, isn't it, Corey?
It still is. I still find it in random bookstores throughout the world, so that's pretty cool.
Great. It's he's been published internationally. The book's been published in China and in India. He developed a company called eBootcamp Incorporated, and you can find him online at ebootcamp.com, where he really works with small business to figure out the digital world and how do you establish a presence and how do you expand that presence online to the benefit of your objectives, whatever they are. If you're a consultant to gather more clients, if you're a doctor to get more patients, if you're a retailer to bring in more customers in the door. So we're really happy to have an opportunity to speak with Corey today and kind of pick his brain and his knowledge about how does a small business owner who's already overwhelmed with the task of kind of managing their enterprise add this very important component to the mix in order to attract the attention of the people, the customers, and the prospects they want to attract, and to bring them in the door, whether it's a bricks and mortar door, it's an online door. So anyway, I'd kind of like to start, Corey, if that's okay with you. I want to read a little bit from from the introduction to your book. It says that eBootcamp gives you the tools to garner the online attention your business needs to thrive, using a combination of search engine optimization techniques, keywords, blogs, e-newsletters, press releases, and other tools. The book shows you how to maximize your online exposure and bring in new customers in droves. Best of all, you can do it all yourself in just a few hours a week without the hassle or expense of hiring a professional internet marketer like me. So thanks a lot for putting me out of business. I really appreciate that, Corey.
And me, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. Susan, you're okay though, because nobody can write. So you're the only one who's going to be relevant after this
That's
conversation.
good. That's good with me. That's good with you. Mind you, as you know, Tom, I am a big booster of social media. I think that even writers need to be looking to people in order to get some advice on how to do that. So, Corey, can you distill it down? I think you mentioned on your website that people can do this in an hour a day.
Yeah,
So
and
I wonder, can you elaborate on that a little?
I can. Can you guys tell if the is the thing switching over to me, or it seems like it's not, is it?
Yeah, you are on my screen.
I am on your screen. Oh, maybe
Front
it's
center. Yeah.
Okay, I am there. Okay. I was just finding the reason I asked, I don't necessarily need to see myself per se, but I just want to make sure that the audience could, just because normally when you guys probably do interviews, they have like their book in the background or whatever. I don't have my book. I have my book in Chinese. That's how sad I am today. That I sadly I don't have my book, but I do have the Chinese version. So if you have anyone out in China who wanted to see a copy of the book, there you go. But sadly, I've run out of my own copies of my book.
Wait, our biggest audience is actually Chinese, Corey. So yeah, you're covered.
I figured as much. I figured that you were big out there.
Could you say a few words in Chinese for our Chinese audience?
I normally would, Tom, but I don't want to come off like overly smart, all these different languages. So I'm gonna try to keep it real and keep the Mandarin Chinese off.
Good. That's real kind.
Yes. Susan, back to your question. I know at some point we have to get serious here, even though I'm trying not to. But I appreciate you keeping Tom and I in line, because that's going to be your job today, is a
Oh,
school teacher.
good. I'll try that one on for sure.
Yeah, we're like kids at heart, and Tom and I go way back. So, um, but yeah, I mean, gosh, it's funny. I did write that book a few years ago, but hearing that intro again, Tom, and I appreciate you reading. I was like, wow, I wonder if it's but you know what? We still use all those digital tools today to drive traffic for our clients. I know for your clients, they still work extremely well. Content is still king. If you can create compelling content and get it out there on a consistent basis, you slowly but surely can brand yourself as a thought leader in your industry. And when you're known as a thought leader in your space, selling is pretty easy. When someone's read my book or read a report that I've created, and then I try to do business with them, it's much easier than cold calling or something to that effect. So that's where I see there's some real opportunity for those that are listening today. And yeah, in terms of time it takes, it's work. There's no doubt about it. And I think what we'll do today is outline kind of what needs to be done. And then you have to ask yourself the honest and real question of what of those things that they talked about can I do, and what do I need to farm out? And then when it comes to farming out, you got to find people who may not be able to do it as well as you can, but they're the next best thing. And Tom, I'll give you a plug right away. I mean, you're so dialed in to this world that if you were writing a blog, let's say for me on my behalf, I would feel very confident in that, and that's because of your level of expertise on my topic. So then the question that your audience has to ask themselves is, who can I get out there who has enough expertise on my topic to be able to do almost as good a job as I could?
Excellent.
Well, so Corey, because you and I both share. I mean, there's a lot of overlap between. We know a lot of the same things. We complement each other real well. So it's kind of easy for me to kind of pick up your sword, and carry it on your behalf. But if I'm in some, if I'm an engineer or something like that, and I want to attract attention for my engineering practice. There aren't a lot of copywriters / engineers out there. So, I mean, what would I do in that situation?
Well, first of all, Tom, stay away from my sword. Okay, that's number one. Sorry. Okay, I'm done.
Well, look at the
time. But in terms of answering your question, that's the beauty of the internet. And we have a lot of clients that we work with that we're not in their industry, and yet we do produce very good content on their behalf. And what we do is we get out to the internet and we put out, for example, Google Alerts, which is a great tool if you're not using Google Alerts. Having trouble speaking, Google Alerts. Just Google it, and you will see that it's a tool from Google, essentially, that you can sign up for, that anytime a piece of content, a web page of any kind on the web comes out with the words that you asked for, they will send it to you. So what we do is we set up Google Alerts for a lot of the topics that our clients talk about. And we will get this information that Google will send us on articles and web pages and such related to that topic, and that helps us get into the mind and the mindset of our clients. So that's one of the ways, Tom, that we do it. Essentially, we do research, and we try to put ourselves in the shoes of our clients. Like you said, for you and me, that's pretty easy. We're in the same industry. But one of our clients is a title insurance agent, and we have to put ourselves in his shoes, and that's not easy to do. But we do it. And we do it by researching, we do it by talking to him, we do it by talking to his clients, and we really dive into him in order to be able to do that. So that's how we do that.
So Corey, can I ask then, kind of cutting to the chase of all that, if you are a small business person and you are just at the point where it makes sense for you to farm out the production of some of your online content, what type of content do you recommend people might? Would it be blogging? What would you recommend?
Good question, Susan. What type of content should you farm out? And blogging comes to mind right off the bat because that's really the area that seems to take the most time. And so for example, a blog, by the way, just for definition's sake, it's literally a landing place for articles. That's really what a blog is. And so you've got a bunch of articles in there, and typically these articles are a page, 2 pages maybe of content, and they take time to write. It took an hour, maybe 2 hours, to craft a really good blog article. So that takes time. And that's one of the things that our clients typically like to farm out to us or to Tom or to other social media agencies out there. And again, the client has to be clear that that article will probably not be as good as if they sat down and wrote it. But the question is it better than not having anything at all? And that's typically yes. The next thing I would do is all your social media posts. So typically, when you have a blog article, we like to do these 5 tips, and that's another a tip to your audience is when you write an article, try to do like 5 tips or 7 tips or 11 tips or 9 tips or whatever, but bullet those tips out because that's how people like to read. So that's a really neat way to express your values through those bullets. And then you take those bullets, or we do, and we use those in social media posts like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Google+, and we literally take those bullets and we use those as social media content. So that's another way that we farm content out, or we do that on the behalf of clients, is if we have 7 bullets, those are 7 social media posts that we don't have to come up with on our own. We already got them. So that's another place that we like to put our content out on behalf of our clients. And the last thing I'll say, Susan, is email marketing. One thing that I'm kind of known for is I don't just talk about social media. I talk about digital marketing because I believe that social media is only a small piece of the giant puzzle. And blogging is extremely important. Your website, and I know we'll get into that, is extremely important, but so is email marketing. Tom, have you checked your email today?
Yeah, I have, Corey. I've spent quite a bit of time, which I do every day, as a matter of fact.
And Susan, have you checked your email today?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, email is not dead. I just wanted to clarify that some of those social media pundits out there may tell you that email is passé. But until I go to a room of 1,000 people and I say, how many of you have checked email? And 999 of them raise their hand. I don't know who that one guy is, but 999 raise their hand. I know that email is still not dead. So I believe strongly that you should be producing an email piece at least once per month, and that's another thing that takes a lot of time, and that's something that you can also farm out.
I want to interject, Corey, because I absolutely agree with you, and I wish I had the source with me right here, but last week or in the last couple of weeks I was reading something on email marketing that said it still has the highest, email marketing still has the highest conversion rate of any form of online digital communication. So it's higher than Facebook, it's higher than LinkedIn, it's higher than Twitter, it's higher than your website. So it's still, it's been joined by a lot of other channels, so to speak. But the experts agree, and the numbers show that it's still, as you said, it's still very much alive and still very relevant. And if you ignore it, you do so at your own peril.
Absolutely. I often say to people that if you put a gun to my head and you said, Corey, you have to sell something today, life or death situation, what would I do? I'd send an email out. So
I'd set up a lemonade stand on my corner.
Touche, okay.
Or maybe in Colorado, maybe a little pot stand, because that's legal out here now.
It is. It's true.
Kind of depends on the weather, I suppose.
Corey, can I circle back a bit? We're talking about content and the types of content that can be farmed out. Let's back up just a little bit and go a little bit big picture. Could you give us your insights on why people want to be producing content? I mean, we Tom and I have had lots of discussions about it as well, but for people listening who may be just a little bit in this world, what do you see as some of the biggest benefits of having an online content strategy?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Susan, because it's important to create context behind anything we talk about. Because I know people out there are saying, "Great, thanks for giving me yet another thing to do." And as small business owners, or even if there are company executives on here, if there's one thing I know about most people, is that they wear a lot of hats. So the question is, where should they be spending their limited amount of time?
Yeah.
The reason I think producing compelling content is so important, especially in the digital world, is threefold. One is it keeps you top of mind. So the thing that we all have to remember is that our prospects don't wake up every morning thinking about us. And so our goal as marketers is to, in a friendly way, get in front of them, get on their radar on a consistent basis until they become in buy mode. You think about I just bought a new car, and that process takes months of research and time, and their job, these dealers' job, these salespeople at the dealerships, is to stay in front of me until I'm ready to purchase, and that's a challenge. So, if they were in touch with me on social media, that'd be one way of doing it. Number two is building credibility, and that's what I talked about earlier about becoming a thought leader. The more I use the example of my dermatologist. When I originally moved to Michigan a few years ago, I'm in Atlanta now, but when I moved to Michigan, I needed a dermatologist because I'm from Florida, so we get sunspots and such. You gotta be careful. And I got on the list of a dermatologist before I ever hired one or went to their place. And she started sending out these e-newsletters of really good information about keeping my skin healthy. And I quickly realized that this person knew what she was talking about. She was very educated and knowledgeable and had a ton of experience in her profession. And she earned my business, not by asking for it, but by showing me how smart she was. And that's where building credibility through content is really critical. And the third one, I said top of mind, building credibility, is driving new leads and new prospects. And that's by, you got to remember, every time you create a new piece of content, it's like giving Google and the other search engines something else to rank you for. So if you have a website with 6 pages, that's only 6 opportunities for your blog or your website to come up on Google. But if you start blogging, every time you write an article, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You write 100 articles in a year, that's 100 new web pages and more opportunities for the craziness of the Google and the search world to find you. And you don't care how they find you, you just care that they find you. And that's also a reason why to build content.
Corey, what
Thank
do you?
Excellent.
You're welcome.
Corey, if we've got so many opportunities now to establish ourselves online. So I mean, back in I think it was 95 or 96 where the company that I was running at the time, we decided that we needed that we should build a website. We decided to start using email marketing. And at that point, that was pretty much it. You had a website, I think we used Microsoft Front Page. If you were a do-it-yourselfer, that was kind of your only option. Or you hand-coded or things like that. And from there it got and everything was very static, very one-dimensional, and so forth. And now you've got so much more. And every day there seems to be a new channel or a new technology, and you've got video, and you've got audio, and you've got 3D, and you've got all this stuff going on. You've got a website, you've got blogs, you've got Pinterest, you've got Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on and on and on and on it goes.
Tom, you just stressed everybody out on this call. They're all freaking
Exactly. I'm so tense right now. I'm gonna give myself a back rub. So, and that's, but I think that's what happens with, at least with my clients, is they become this paralysis kind of creeps in, and they just think, what's the use? And so what I try to do when I'm working with a client is to kind of take the stress out of the situation and say, we'll start here, when we're comfortable there, we'll move here and so forth, but not overwhelm them. So I don't know if that mirrors your experience or how you work with clients. Obviously, if they can afford to outsource, they can do more because they can hire somebody with the expertise and the comfort with all these different channels. But if they're in more or less do-it-yourself mode, you've got somebody coming to you say, I know I need a website. I've been avoiding it. Where do I start? How do I start? What's your answer to them, Corey? Lead me through that. If I'm that newbie to the web, or I've had a website but I haven't done anything with it for 10 years, and I know that I want to kind of now move forward. Um, Explain to me the process, and maybe over the next several months, how I'm going to engage with this new, for me at least, this new model to be effective. Because if I do have a website or I haven't gone for it, I either haven't had the confidence or I've done it and I haven't had the success. So how am I going to, so take me through that process.
Well, I think, as far as like, if you know how in the Chinese calendar, to bring back the Chinese book again theme, they got like the year of the dragon, or they have like different year, you know more about that than I do, probably, Tom. But in my little social media,
I don't know why, but yeah.
I don't know why either. But
I'm year of the rooster, by the way. Just
it
so
is,
you know.
yes, the year of the rooster. Yes. But in my world, it's the year of focus, and that's really been a big term that we've been sharing and using a lot with our clients, and that's just because, gosh, Tom, when you were talking about all those sites, you were stressing me out, man. It's like I can't even, this is my livelihood, and I can't even keep up with the Instagrams and the Pinterests and the Google Plus and the Twitters and all that. So, what I say to the people out there is, yeah, man, there's just too much out there. And you talked about analysis paralysis. Where do I begin? Where do I start? I say this: focus. Do not be a jack of all social media sites, master of none. Focus in on 1, 2, maybe 3 areas on the digital space where your customers and prospects are hanging out. I use the story in almost every one of my presentations that I do about a guy who ran up to me before my speech, and he said, "Corey, I really need you to get my Twitter feed on my website. That's what I'm here for. I need to make sure that the people who visit my website can see my Twitter stream." I said, "Okay, I can help you with that. Tell me a little bit more about your business." He said, "Well, I sell medical supplies to the elderly, age 60 and above." And I said, "That's interesting, sir." I said, "I have a question for you. How sure are you that your customers are on Twitter?" And he kind of looked at me, and I looked at him, and we sort of had this sort of moment of zen. And he said, "I don't think they are." And I said, "Well, maybe you don't need to be on Twitter." And he said, "Maybe I don't," and he was actually quite happy with the ending of that conversation, because he got to cut something out of his world, which is fun to do sometimes. So I really challenge your audience to think about where your customers and prospects are spending time. Are they on Facebook? Are they really using Twitter? Are they more of a business community? Are they more focused on LinkedIn? Do they read articles online? Ask them. Say, where do you get your news? "Oh, well, I typically just read so-and-so or so-and-so." But really try to get into their heads and figure out where they are, and then focus, zero in on those sites. That's really critical, in my opinion. And then the last thing I'll say, Tom, to your other question about the website, and this is so important: fire yourself. Do not, I repeat, do not build your own website unless you are a web designer. You are going to frustrate yourself, you're going to take way too much time, and you're going to do a crap job. So that's one of those things that I don't care where you get the money, I don't care how you do it, but don't do it. Get someone who knows what they're doing to build your site.
Great advice. You brought up a good point. Just to follow up, and I was talking to Susan beforehand. I thought this would be something great to explore, because you've got all these different, as you said, Twitter is more appropriate for some than for others. Pinterest is more appropriate for some than for others. So Um, let's just establish a given that every business, and I know that's a blanket statement, but every business I can think of needs a website. Would you agree with that?
I would.
Um, and almost every business would benefit, if only for the search engine, um, the visibility it gives you to search engines and the ability to kind of focus on your keywords and phrases and those kinds of things. So blogs are for most businesses uh, can be a very effective tool. Um, so if we knock off those, then should we be if we've just got a limited time, if we're just going to focus and we're just going to say so, and I'm just going to give you a couple of, I'm just going to go down and kind of wrote out a list of different kinds of businesses. So what I want you to do is just kind of give me an idea. If you were in that business and you had a blog, you had a website, what one or two other social media channels would you think would be important to pursue? So I'm a retailer. I'm a small clothing store, mom and pop owned small clothing store. I sell fairly high-end fashion and so forth, a lot, heavy on the service, nice, designer labels and so forth. Where should I be in I've got a website, I blog about the latest fashion trends and so forth. Where else where do I need to be?
In that case, you are you're image heavy, and what I mean by that is you relate a lot to pictures in terms of your business model. So that immediately tells me that Pinterest and Instagram would be two areas that I would focus some resources on. And that's simply because, again, in the fashion world, it's so important to see the product, that tangible product. And those two sites are image heavy. That's what they are. They're picture heavy. They're basically social networks for pictures. And that's what Instagram and Pinterest is all about. And assuming that your clientele is at least partly female, Pinterest is about 80% female driven. So if your audience is even remotely close to that demographic, then Pinterest would be a clear opportunity for you. And then the other one I would say is Facebook. And I'm going to probably say Facebook for almost every industry you talk about, simply because it is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. It's the largest social network in the world. Most people spend time on there. The question, of course, is as a business, how do we engage people on Facebook? And that's a whole different conversation. But for the purposes of this question and the retail store, I would be Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook would be my three.
Okay. So let's go to totally 180 degrees. I'm a B2B consultant. I'm maybe just a small firm, maybe myself, maybe a couple of peers and so forth, but we work with a business-based clientele, medium to large businesses and so forth. Maybe we're IT consultants, maybe we're management consultants. So where do I need to be?
Well, you asked if it were me, so if it were me, I would be solely focused on LinkedIn and Facebook. LinkedIn's the obvious one. Most of the people who you asked that question to probably thought that in their heads, and they're right. LinkedIn's the business-to-business network. It's a professional network. There's really great opportunity there to engage decision makers if you do it the right way. They are there. They feel comfortable there, unlike Facebook. So that is a place that I would spend 75% of my time if I was that individual. I would also challenge them or to think about Facebook. And what I mean Facebook is actually friending these people. So my example there is, I am personally connected with many of my clients via Facebook. And that scares a lot of people, Tom, just because they can see things that maybe you don't want them to see in your personal life. But the opposite side there is you get to deepen the relationship with your clients in a way that you may not have without it. I can see, when a tragedy happens, they typically share those kind of things on Facebook so I can support them. When success or opportunities happen, I can be there to congratulate them. A kid graduates college, they show pictures of children and grandchildren and that type of thing. So it's not like I'm stalking, but I basically treat them as a friend. And it has increased our relationship, deepened our relationship, strengthened that relationship. So I would encourage that person who happens to have long-standing clients. And again, this wouldn't be for the retail person who has a million clients who they buy something and then they never see them again. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about someone who pays you on an ongoing basis, who might be a client for many years. That's the type of person that might be a good Facebook friend.
Okay. And then what about a somebody you know, a tradesperson? By that I mean a handyman, a plumber, an electrician. Those kinds of guys that, you know, are busy around the neighborhood. Busy. We hire them for upkeep on our home, or when we have a, you know, our air conditioner goes out. Those kinds of things. What about those guys?
Excellent three categories, by the way, Tom, because it really does kind of do the spectrum, you know. So that's great. For that person, you know, you mentioned assuming they already have a website, but gosh, that website's going to make or break you, big time. So if I'm that person, I first make sure that website really shines. And it doesn't have to have a bunch of bells and whistles, but it has to look professional, and it has to give the customer or visitor what they're looking for. Reviews, services, phone number, in an easy-to-see way. The second thing is I'd be all over those review sites, Tom. Any site that comes up, when they type in, you know, roofing, Denver, Colorado, or you know, home repair, Birmingham, Alabama, whatever, and you see Angie's List, you see Kudzu, you see Google Local Business, whatever ranks high, you know, I'd be all over. What I mean all over is I'd make sure I have a managed page on there, which most of those sites you can, and I'd make sure that I have reviews wherever I can. Yelp would be another one in there. And you know, I'd ask my customers that you know, have expressed to me that they really valued my services to go out there and write a review for me. And you know, Yelp doesn't like solicited reviews, but the other sites are more open to that kind of request. So I would make sure that the odds are stacked in your favor when it comes to those review sites. And then from a social media perspective, Tom, you know, Facebook has its place, but you know, I guess, gosh, with the limited amount of time and resources they have, I'd be all over search engine optimization, which would include, you know, your website and those review sites, and I'd probably be over Facebook, and that's probably about it.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I'm glad you brought up the review sites because I agree with you. I think that's where your focus has to be, even above Facebook and so forth. It's because that's, and I'm just doing that based on how I'm looking for vendors and so forth. I'm looking at Yelp and I'm looking at their, you know, at the reviews on Google Plus or Google Local, whatever they are today.
Right.
So, or Foursquare, or what's the big travel site that, you know, we all look at? Yeah, TripAdvisor, those kinds of things. So,
Corey,
and Yelp is entering. Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm just burning to ask a question. Sorry to cut you off there, Tom. But we've got Corey here.
Not a problem. Please do.
And Corey, you mentioned something earlier that really caught my imagination, and that was you mentioned how important it is to create compelling content. Could you tell us a little bit about what you consider compelling?
Yeah, that's I can see why that was a burning question, because I have a feeling that was probably a burning question to a lot of people, because it's easier said than done, right, Susan?
Yeah.
You know, I think the first question you have to ask yourself is, you know, what is it that my customers and prospects deem valuable? How can I help them? And I'll throw a little plug in for my friend who I just interviewed, Jay Baer, a great book out there called Utility. And he really talks a lot about that, which is helping customers and people and such, and that is indeed, you know, the world that we're in now. It's less of a direct marketing angle, and it's more these side angles of just. He mentioned the example, which I thought was pretty interesting, of the clothing outfit called Columbia, and how they have an app that basically tells you. The app tells you. What does the app tell you? The app tells you. Tom, do you know this by any chance? Because I know you're a big outfitter guy. I'm trying to remember what he said, but it has nothing to do with clothing. It has to do with I don't know, I'll throw an example out, it's probably wrong, but it's like a compass or something, I don't know, but it has something to do with the outdoors. Nothing to do with their clothing. But they created this app, and so Jay was saying that when he was out in the wilderness with his family, you know, he used this app as a resource while he was out there. And this was an example of them doing something that is not a direct correlation to marketing their stuff, but they were truly trying to help their customers. And in Jay's eyes, that was a real big win for them. You know, hard to translate whether or not that's going to increase their merchandise sales, but definitely a concept to really think about when it comes to marketing. So going back to your question, Susan, you know, figuring out how you can help people. One of the areas that I like to spend some time on are FAQs, frequently asked questions. What are your frequently asked questions? What do people want to know about your business? What are not the things that you want to talk about? You know, what's your, you know, best product or whatever? But, you know, if I'm a roofing contractor, you know, how can I keep my roof lasting the longest? Now, this may not help you, roofer, because you want to come back and do my roof again, but I want you to tell me how to keep my roof lasting as long as possible. And if you help people do that, that's going to really be the kind of content that they're going to want to digest. So you really want to think about in terms of their interests and not in terms of our own, and that's how you create compelling content.
Fabulous. Fabulous. And now that takes a lot more than an hour a day, does it not? Or what's your strategy for limiting as much time, you know, limiting our time on content development?
Well, you know, it's one of those things that you really just have to be clear with your expectations of yourself and of your team. You have to see who you have on staff to be able to create content. You know, I would recommend utilizing employees wherever possible. You'd be surprised at these small business operations. They have 4 or 5 people there, and some of them are excellent writers. And they could totally spend a Monday morning, you know, crafting a good article or something. So try to leverage those internal resources if you can. But if you can't, then again, that's at the point that you got to start thinking about, you know, who's out there, who gets this stuff, who can really help me create compelling content. And you know, I'm not plugging anybody in particular, but you do your homework, do your research, see what they've written, see what you can afford. And see if you can get some help from some outside resources.
You know, just to follow up, I think maybe one of the most prominent examples of a company that has empowered their employees to engage with the broader audience is Zappos, which before I think they got bought by somebody big, but Zappos had, you know, when they were still growing, and one of the reasons that they grew was they had over 300 employees at the time. They empowered all 300 to tweet, to engage on Facebook, and a lot of companies don't. They don't want anybody to say anything unless it's been vetted by the CEO and the attorneys and the board of directors and everybody else. But Zappos said, you know, here's a few guidelines, but other than that, you're on your own. And you know, and so all of a sudden they had, because they treated their employees with respect and assumed that they were competent, and you know, all of a sudden they had 350 ambassadors out there on you know, on Twitter and on these other social media channels, and I think that as much as anything really, plus the fact that they had great policies. But I think it fueled their growth. So you know, if you want a reason to kind of empower the people that are working for you, that's a great company to point to.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. And they were able to create an army of content producers. You know, so it certainly probably saved them literally thousands upon thousands of dollars in creating content. And yeah, were mistakes made? Of course they were. Did people say stupid stuff? Absolutely. But you know, stuff happens. You know, I mean, you know, it's again, just because Jay and I talked yesterday, I think of something else he said that I thought was great. and I credit him with this, but he said, you know, with these companies that are so afraid of these conversations, well, what if you were on every phone conversation that your employees were having with your clients? What if you saw every email that your employees had with your clients? Do you think you'd be happy with everything you saw? Probably not. The only reason we think about this so much is, yes, it's public, but at the same time, we trust them interacting with our clients on all those other different media channels. Something to think about.
Well, you know, and the NSA is already doing that, so.
It took you, what, 38 minutes before you mentioned the NSA, Tom? I'm proud of you.
No, not the National Speakers
No,
Association.
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they're
Yeah, we
already
get
in
very
on everything. In
excited with
fact,
the National Speakers Association.
they're probably in on this conversation, as a matter of fact. So,
They
Susan, if you don't
probably
mind being
are.
recorded by our government.
Right, right.
Don't I have rights about that? Okay, I got another question, Corey. You know what? I speak with a lot of people who get really excited about their online presence, and they've got some ideas, and off they go. And they start tweeting, and they start writing blogs. What's the role of strategy, do you think, in all of this?
Yeah.
How strategic do you have to be?
Very strategic. And they already made their first mistake, and I don't even know them. And that's that they went off tweeting before they had strategy in place. So you're doomed for failure in that regard. So I highly recommend that you take a step back and you think about, why are we doing this? What are we doing? How are we going to measure? What's the whole scope? You know, so what's the end result? Do we want them to walk in the door? Do we want them to pick up the phone? Do we, you know, I had this this consultation one time with actually a roofing company, and we were all sitting there together, and we talked about their whole thing, and at the end they said, Corey, how are we going to sell more roofs? I understand, you know, we went over all the details about Facebook and Google Plus and all these things. I want to sell more roofs. How are we going to do that? I said, do you have access to your roof up here? And they said, yeah. And I said, let's go. So we all went up to the roof. And I was scared to death because I don't get on roofs very often. But I got up there with these guys, and we all sat up there for a second. I looked at all of them, and I said, this is where you're going to sell your roofs, not online. You're going to build credibility. You're going to stay top of mind. You're going to engage. But you're still going to sell your free estimates that you've been doing way before social media came in order to close that deal. You're just going to get more of them via social media. And their eyeballs went to the sky and they got it. Okay? So make sure you get that part down. You know, social media is an opportunity to generate more leads and engagement, but it's not the end-all be-all. You got to still have that funnel in place. It's only the beginning of the funnel. You've still got to finish off with whatever you do to close business. So I really recommend for anyone listening to be very clear on what your total strategy is and how these social media sites are going to fit into the big picture. Because if you just start tweeting, you're not going to be successful. You're just not.
Great, thank you.
Well, I think that we've taken enough of your time, and I think we've probably overwhelmed anybody watching this with the information we've shared. But Corey, you've really given us some great tips, starting out with incorporating in every blog post you write, incorporating several tips that you can then use to kind of as social media tidbits through Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, to at the end really kind of driving home the importance of an overarching kind of strategy under which all this activity takes place, and keeping in mind that a roofing company isn't in the social media business. They're in the roofing business, and they merely use social media as a way to let more people know about the quality and the expertise that they bring to bear on a project. I have to thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about how you just kind of give us a little commercial, Corey, on what you can do for people who want to engage with you and where they can do that.
Sure. Basically, there's really kind of three areas of our business. One is I'm a full-time speaker. So if you have associations or events or things of that nature and you'd like me to come out, I definitely could do that. I would direct you to CoreyPerlman.com for that, or eBootcamp, but Corey Perlman's more focused on the speaking, and that's you can see my name down there as the way to spell my name.com. And then oftentimes when I do things like this, you get to a point where they feel like they can't manage everything, and we do have an agency that does do email marketing pieces and social media posts and blogging and all that. And if you're interested in that discussion, you can go to ebootcamp.com. So that's E and then bootcamp.com, bootcamp.com. And I also do private consultations. So if you wanted me to come into your company and spend half a day with you and your team and talk just about your social media marketing and such, I can do that with you as well. And you can email me at corey@ebootcamp.com, corey@ebootcamp.com. I thank both Susan and Tom. It's an excellent show you guys got going here. You play off each other very well. Susan, you keep Tom in line, which is very important to do that because you know how he can be. But thank you guys for having me. Great opportunity and great show.
Thanks for being with us, Corey. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Corey. Very much appreciated. And any chance I have to spend time with you and Susan is is definitely to my benefit. So,
well,
all right, everybody. Well, I guess
much
that's
appreciated.
another
I
edition
honestly
of.
couldn't agree with you more, Tom. So,
Yeah. Thanks, Corey. Corey does live he doesn't live on the Gulf of Mexico. He lives in the Gulf of Mexico,
That's right.
just so you know.
That's right.
Anyway, so with that, I don't know what to say except thanks again for tuning in and being a part of this. And with that, we're out.